Good morning. Welcome to our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting today, the 8th of July, 2021. No mai haramai, and welcome also to members of the public who have joined us today. And we do have the press, so it's nice to see you all here. And of course to our CEO and our hard-working staff, nice to see you here as well. We are live streaming, so to those watching from afar, thank you for joining us this morning. Councillors, please turn off your phones and put them out of sight, preferably. We will be taking a break so that you can answer some of your urgent calls. I expect to take morning tea about 10:30, possibly a little later, and lunch at midday. So thank you very much. Councillor Tapsell, Morena, Councillor Tapsell is going to say our karakia this morning.
Kia ora, Merepeka. E te atua kaharawa, ko koe te tohu rangatira, te tohu mātauranga. Manakitia mai mātou, wauponanga I tēnei wā. E mahi nei I a mātou mahi, mo te painga o ngā tangata o te kaunihira o ngā roto o Rotorua. Takua mai, kia tau te rangi Mārie, ki runga I a mātou I ngā wā katoa, ko ihu karati hoki tō mātou ariki. Almighty God, who alone is the leader of all mankind and the fountain of all knowledge, send thy blessing upon us, your servants, this day, as we strive to do all things good for the betterment of the people of the Rotorua district. May we be tolerant in ourselves at all times, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. And I was rather remiss to also not welcome our other members of our committee today from the Rural, the Lakes and Te Tata o Aotearoa. Welcome to you this morning. Any apologies, please? Carl, everybody's present. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kumar, that's right. Yes, sorry, Councillor Kumar. We do have apologies from Councillor Kumar. Could I have a move and a seconder, please, that Councillor Kumar's... Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Thank you, Councillor McPherson. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Any declarations of interest this morning? Carl, thank you very much. Any items of urgent items not on the agenda? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chair. In the light of the Trumper amendment being defeated at Council, why is the item about the Springfield Golf Course Westbrook issue not on the agenda, or at least signal as to when it might be expected to be on the agenda?
Thank you. Last week we did, it was, I recall that very well, but we did have an explanation from our staff member at the time to say that there would be a comprehensive program of work that would come to us that would probably take into account the issues that you wanted to raise the other day with that motion. The
question is when might be expected. Is there some sort of a timeline involved here?
That's a question. Yes, I think that's a relevant question. Perhaps. Thank you. I'll just ask our. Thank you, Councillor. But first, I'll ask our staff member. Thank you.
Morena tātou.
Jocelyn.
So we've been planning to do the work on the Westbrook precinct for some time now, and it was planned to be through years 2 and 3 of our current LTP. There's a number of items that we need to check off in order to complete that piece of work. We have done some ecological assessments and some sport field assessments, but there's more to be done there. We're going to do an economic assessment of the area, as well as the housing assessment. We need to do further flooding and stormwater modelling for the area, look at alternative land availability, get our master plan designed and fully go through with community consultation. That's hugely important to us. And then, of course, we need to develop a business case or some type of case to bring back to council for conversation at that point. So I would estimate that that's going to take us probably the next couple of years, the entire piece of work. With respect to looking at the renewal the golf course, our lease specifically states that there is no right of renewal, and so then we would need to go through a process of working out if it was the council's direction, new lease, which would also include community consultation because it's important that we have that discussion with the community. At this point, the valuation for that block of land, the 33 hectares or 80 odd acres, is around about 14 million. Telfer Young have given us that estimate. So we would need to have that conversation with the community and look at a fair lease, or if that was what was decided. So there is quite a bit of work that would need to be done. However, we do have until 2027 to complete that piece of work. So we would, until the lease expires, and we would expect we will be well ahead of that time in around about 2024.
Thank you. I'm going to comment on that, but yes, Councillor McPherson.
Yes, the specific amendment, we decided not to defer consideration of the issue until 2024 as a council. Now, what we've just heard in terms of timeline would appear to be going back to and contrary to the agreement at council.
No, we heard last week, and it's been explained again this morning, and there are significant issues that need to be, and we've just had it clearly explained there. So I'm not going to have the work program for our staff driven outside of the extent of the work that they've got to do. It's been clearly explained. This is not going to be a quick fix. It should not be a quick fix. It needs to be well worked through, and I'm happy that it is on our work program over the next coming years. It is not an urgent matter, and I'm not going to consider any further discussion on that this morning. So we are going to move on to our program of work, our agenda. Thank you. Are there any further items? No further items? Sorry. Oh, yes, sorry about that. That was put on, yes. There is a verbal update. It is not on the agenda, but there is a verbal update from JP Gaston on the district development in the public excluded session of the meeting, and this will be at the end of the public meeting. And the reasons for that it's come up this morning is that it is commercially sensitive and to protect the privacy of the person involved. So that will be a discussion after the public session this morning. Thank you, councillors. So I'll move to agenda item number 5, confirmation of our minutes from the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting of the 10th of June 2021. Are there any changes, amendments before I ask for a mover and a seconder? So thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. It's been moved and seconded that the minutes of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting held on the 10th of June 2021 be confirmed as a true and correct record. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you, carried. Now we have the recommendation, the adoption of the final Te Oranganui and Rāwhiti Mai Eastside Community Wellness Plan. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the report adoption of the final Te Oranganui Rāwhiti Mai Eastside Community Wellness Plan be received? Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Thomas. Oh, it's Mrs. Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. I do it again. I'm obviously trying to pair you two off. Please excuse me. Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Thank you, Your Worship. All those in favour that the yes.
Chair, I'd like to defer to Eugene Berriman-Kemp seconding the motion, because he has been our councillor rep on this work stream. It's appropriate that he has a bit of ownership there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And perhaps I could ask Councillor, Mr. Berriman-Kemp, if you could welcome. I'll put the motion first. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Carried. Mr. Berriman-Kemp, I wonder if you could welcome, please, our visitors from the east side. I know you were from there too, but in the manner that's appropriate for this morning. Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eugene. Thank you. And so with the report now, we've got who's going to be over. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Kia ora. Have we got enough chairs there for everyone? It's just nice to see everybody from the Eastside community with us this morning. Welcome this morning. Welcome to you all. Kia ora.
Tēnā tātou e hui mai nei, tēnei ata. It's with a lot of pride that I'm here, sitting here and able to fortunately introduce this plan that has been a community-led, community piece of work that is all about the wellness of the East Side, both in terms of ngā tangata, the people, and te taiao, so the environment. So I know that a tremendous amount of work has gone in. We've had our hapu partners involved, we've had our central government partners involved, and of course we've had our own staff there to support and facilitate along the way and sort of keep things moving forward together as a team. So I think that it's a real credit to the strength of the community and a real credit to everyone who's been involved that now they're at a place where they're able to introduce this plan, which looks enormous here and it's absolutely fabulous. The team are going to introduce and talk through the plan a little bit, but I did want to say this morning that it's a tremendous way of working when we go into our community and our community lead and guide us through their priorities and the things that are important to them, and we work alongside them, and we'll be on our side, making sure that the work that we do as a council and all the bits and pieces that we can control and work with will align to this plan to ensure that the community are supported in their aspirations and desires, and we do look forward to taking this approach in other areas. So I won't say too much else and I'll hand over now to the team, but I did want to say tēnā koutou, kia ora.
Morena tātou. Being here this morning is really exciting. It's taken over 18 months to get to this point, working in a different way and acknowledging the connection between Hunga'ao, the people, and Taiao, the environment. The plan represents commitment from multiple parties to ensure Eastside Rotorua is connected and will be a thriving community for future mokopuna. The Eastside Community Wellness Plan provides a framework for future development and growth within Eastside Rotorua. The plan has been developed in partnership between the Tātou Pounamu Collective and Council. This partnership is values-based and has taken time to nurture, develop, and for trust to be created. It is important that we acknowledge the special nature of this partnership with 5 Eastside hapu sitting around the tepu. Key contributors that influence the current and future Eastside have also supported the plan. And of course, those living within the Eastside Rohi have also had input to the final document that we present today. At this point, I would like to acknowledge the plan's deliberation working group, and that consisted of Matua Parauni Pirika, Niriaha Pirika, Ralph Mosen, Selwyn Ingsley, Rangatihi Penny, Shirley Parry, and Eugene Berriman Camp. Champions from the Tātou Pounamu Collective, some of which are here today, and representatives from some of the key contributors that are also here today, Ngāti Whakaui Tribal Lands Incorporated, Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and Waka Kotahi. Representatives are also here from across councils, groups that were involved in the plan, so planning and development solutions, infrastructure, recreation and open spaces, district development, community and regulatory services, te ako Māori, and safe and sustainable journeys. So I hope that just highlights the connectivity and the integration that we've had across the development of this plan. There are 2 elements to the Eastside Community Wellness Plan that we'd like to highlight this morning. The first is the strategic alignment of the plan, and then the development of the plan. So we begin with the strategic alignment. The plan encapsulates Council's organisational strategic documents, including Vision 2030, the Spatial Plan, the Homes and Thriving Strategic Framework, and the Long-Term Plan. The Eastside Community Wellness Plan also embodies the Eastside Tātou Panamu strategy that reflects the vision of Eastside Rotorua being a safe place for every tamaiti or child to reach their potential. The Tātou Panamu strategy is underpinned by the po or values of whakapapa. This is the foundation for relationship building, learning who others are and where they come from, understanding the past journey and commitment to the kaupapa. The other value is whanaungatanga, and this is about building strong, trusting relationships, making connections as individuals, as representatives, as a collective. Relationships that are honest, friendly, safe, caring, respectful and empathetic. Manaakitanga is the third po, and this is about encouraging and enhancing each other's mana, treating others with kindness, listening and embracing diverse voices, inclusivity. And the fourth po or value is wairuatanga, and that's about feeling the wairua, reflecting and evaluating, growing belonging and wellness through the growth of identity, language, culture, whānau, hapu and iwi. The strategic alignment between Council and the Tātou Panamu Collective reflects the aim of putting the best interests of the Eastside community to the forefront, the meeting of these interests being met in genuine partnership. The Eastside Community Wellness Plan represents a shared vision for Eastside Rotorua that's collectively nurturing our future. Together we can and do make a difference. Tātou tātou, we together.
Kia ora.
That's you.
Morena tātou. Just to follow on from where Lee left off, we collectively as a, with Council, the key contributors and the community and the working group came up with a shared vision which was encapsulating not only the Tātou Panamu strategy and Council's vision. And that's how we landed with the collectively nurturing our future. Together we can and do make a difference. Tātou tātou, we together. From there, to look at how we could deliver on the vision, we developed a set of key objectives that would be to try and work towards the vision, and then to realise those objectives, there's a number of key moves which are highlighted through the plan, and the 5 of those key moves have a number of actions to try and deliver them. And those actions could well be delivered by Council, community, other key contributors, and anyone that needs to be around the tepu that can support the delivery of those actions. To take you a little bit on the journey or to of how we arrived at that is the journey that Lee described, which has been sort of approximately around 18 months. We worked together to develop a partnership, and that got embedded in a WE MOU, which was a clear understanding of how the parties would work together. And from there, other key contributors have been brought into the fold, which is to understand their aspirations and how their plans can work towards that shared vision. We then, you may remember, we came to this committee probably just 9 months ago, I believe in September, and brought a draft plan, which we then went out for community consultation. The engagement on that plan happened through September, October last year, and the resulting feedback was then looked at through the deliberations committee that this committee, I believe, had endorsed in terms of the representation and councillor representatives on that committee. And that brings us to the point which we're at today, which is the little flower highlighted at the end. And I guess that's that key thing is, while we have a plan, the journey isn't over, and we've got a wee way to go in terms of implementing that stuff. There's a number of actions that have already occurred, and a number that are still to happen, quite a number that are still to happen, and that way of working will be embedded in that ongoing journey. And up on the screen here is a number of pictures and things, I guess, that reflect that journey. in terms of the Tātou Panamu Collective and the Eastside Hapu that have come together to develop the MOU. And we had that, I believe, I want to go back to November 2019 when we signed the MOU together, and then began that way of working in terms of working with others and key contributors to come to that initial draft plan. And I guess for us personally that are part of council, when we went through that work of engaging with the community and on the draft plan, we came up with a strategy in terms of our community engagement and our comm strategy that was built together between all the partners of Tātou Panamu and the Hapu, and we supported each other in terms of joint planning and skill sharing and engagement activities through that period. I guess that not only builds the capability and capacity of both organisations, but it was a real manifestation of that way of working, which was really empowering, I believe, for all parties. The partnership delivered a number of key activities through that engagement period. We have some cross-kura workshops with young people. We had a number of hui facilitated by the champions of the Tātou Panamu Collective, to community workshops where all were invited to be a part of that and to provide feedback on the plan, as well as a quite in-depth comm strategy in terms of trying to connect with our community via different mechanisms that we had, and that was often supported by a number of our community champions who were sort of, I guess, leading that call to action. Cool. And then later last year, the deliberations working group through the sort of November through to the early new year looked at all the feedback and made a number of recommendations for improvements to the plan based on a lot of the feedback. The overall message on that was that there was a lot of positivity about what the plan was to achieve, and there was a lot of recommendations in terms of what we could feedback to a number of it, not only council operations, but other key partners that have been part of the plan. And that deliberations leads us to where we are today in terms of the final Eastside Community Wellness Plan. Cool.
So now that the Eastside Community Wellness Plan has been finalised, attention needs to move to actually implementing the actions within the plan that are not already underway. Achievement of the actions within the plan will require an ongoing partnership with the Tātou Panamu Collective, a commitment from Council to use a place-based approach, an Eastside way of working, which involves an inclusive approach, the collaboration and coordination within Council, across the partnership, key contributors, landowners, community groups, businesses and residents. It will involve asking who else needs to be around the tepu to ensure that Eastside Rotorua is a well-planned, connected and thriving community. Again, Council's contribution to reaching this vision is encapsulated in the LTP and includes our current and planned business while using an Eastside way of working. I'd now like to offer an opportunity for those that are with us here this morning to have some input into their experience of the process that was used.
Kia ora tata katoa. Anei rā te whiwake ngā mihi ati kia koutou e whakaawhi o te ruma nei ki te pēhea o tā ngamua wā tātou nei Rotorua nui a kahumata mōmoi. So, kia ora koutou katoa. Tēnei hoki te whiwake ki a koe. I whakaupoko hia wā tātou nei hui I tēnei wā. Merepeka, anei rā te whiwake ngā mihi ati kia koe. Tēnei hoki koutou rā I whakamoi miti atu ki wā tātou nei ātua, no reira tāni ane rei hoki te whiwake ngā mihi, kia koe, tēnei hoki kia koe Yuji, anei hoki te whiwake ngā mihi. Tēnei hoki kia koe Stevie, anei rā te whiwake ngā mihi, ko koe I ko koe te kai uringa wā tātani waka o te Rotorua nui a kahu mata mōmoi, kia kora ai wā tātani waka e tī tahara. No reira kai mihi. So, yeah, just a big hello to you all. Kia ora the council. Hopefully you got all our best interests of wā tātani Rotorua nui a kahu mata mōmoi. I think for us, in terms of a tribal, in terms of our iwi hapu, why we have to work this way is because we got nowhere else to go. This is our papakainga.
Kia ora.
And now, so our investment into this is our papakainga is going to be a large, huger than a lot of things because we're here to stay. Nowhere else to go. One of the things that drives us is Rotorua, is our lake. Our lake is paru. It's been paru for a long time. So to clean our lake, we need to clean ourselves too in our thinking. Our thinking of why we do what we do. Our thinking in terms of the effect of our mahi into our land that parus our lake. Because if we're thinking like that, then we're going to think like that to paru our people too. And as for me, being Māori and just observing the paru that is coming on our tamariki mokopuna, it is not good, not good. So this is part of the strategy was about clean Rotorua. Nurture our people to understand the value of our waters, to understand the values of our taiao, and then maybe we might start to think a lot better. Maybe we might start to think a lot better in terms of, especially for council, especially for everybody that's going to plug something on our land, what is the effect of that to our lake? What is the effect of that to our thing? So when these couple of these pit bulls over here that come from your unit, I think, these two over here, so, yeah, it was a good journey, great journey to work with these, I would not say pitbull, but, yeah, it's a determination. When I'm using that, it's a determination to do something, to get it right. And so, yeah, it's been valuable working with these guys. It's given me a bit of trust in you guys too, in our council, because it hasn't been very trusting for many years and been living in Rotorua. Our councils have not been good. They have not been good. I must say the council at the moment is looking good. Still got a ways to trust. But we're getting there. We're getting there. And so, yeah, I suppose that's all I can add. Is that enough, Lee? Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou. If you haven't met me before, my name's Selwyn Inslee from Ngāpuna, born and bred, and here on behalf of Hurungatarangi, but also repping the three hapu, Hurungatarangi, Ngāti Taiotu, Ngāti Takahu. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the process over the last 18, 19 months. I haven't made all the meetings, but I know in terms of the mahi that I've done alongside the other hapu on the east side, really starting with the Eastern Arterial debate, whatever is, what is it, the battle or whatever it was, and being in the hotel room or the conference room at Ridges for 2-3 years. So I've come to trust the other hapu very much around our belief in who we are out on the east side, our vehement protection of the taiao, the waterways, basically from the maunga to the river to Rotorua nui a kaumata momoi. Very, very passionate about some way looking at our built environment. I know the 50-year, what's the plan around possibly where would we move all of the big widgets, you know, from sewage plant through to an industry, residential. How can we build that in the future that doesn't just completely annihilate the taiao? Yes, we're living our best lives and standard of livings are supposedly pretty high, but if we don't look at this proactively, the taiao is going to be our worst nightmare. Because the puorenga, as Matua, my uncle Peter State has said a number of times, it is one of the most polluted, if not the most polluted awa in New Zealand. And if you've met him, I think you probably have, some of the councillors, you'll know how strong he is on the puorenga and the environment. But I'm glad to be working alongside the likes of Lee and Rob, members of the regional council as well, because they're actually open to trying to rebuild in terms of wetland development. Been in a few meetings just recently, so I'm quite optimistic. But I'll just plug Matua Paraone's, you know, basically challenge to the council. We all need to do better, and I hope we're all in partnership and agreement that we will move forward in terms of making our environment a much safer place for our mokopuna and tamariki. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Council, Meripeka, Stevie, thank you for the opportunity. I can only tautoko what's just been said, but I'd add one other comment, and it has been really refreshing to interact with Council over the last, it's actually been 2 years. You saw in November when we signed that MOU, there was work before then, so this process started almost 2 years ago, and it has been quite different from the previous 8 years that I've been working with different departments in council, with both Te Rorotarangi and Ngāti Unuku Kōpako. It is really refreshing, and long may the partnership approach to dealing with hapu and with communities continue. Kia ora.
Kia ora no. So that concludes the presentation of our Te Oranga Nui Rāwhiti Mai Eastside Community Wellness Plan. We are happy to take any questions, but there is a recommendation around this for adoption, so I'll hand back to you, our
Thank
Chair.
you. We'll take questions first, and then at the conclusion, then the recommendations, obviously. Thank you. And I know there will be some, and thank you so much for all coming along this morning, those at the table and those in the gallery there, for you to present this wonderful plan, actually. And I know there's going to be a number of questions, so I'll open it up to councillors and the Mayor for questions now at this time. Committee members. Yes, Your Worship, please.
And I'll say something later, but kia ora everybody, and fabulous to have you all here. And can I also acknowledge the wider community of Eastside who are here today. It's a lovely feeling walking in here and seeing your faces where we've now worked together to get something as significant as this. But I'll stick to the questions first. My question is, there's an old paradigm always in community development that you've got to have a centre, and from there everything flows. What was the view and the plan about building that community hub? How are you dealing with that approach? Because, you know, in my day, that's what we did. You plonked a centre there and then everything happened.
Kia ora, Mayor. That's a fabulous question. Technical questions will go to the team, but I'm going to have a shot at this one because you'll be aware that in the LTP that's recently been signed off, community hubs are one of the aspirations that are within that plan for the 4 areas that we've identified as priorities. Definitely Eastside is one of those areas. But I just want to take a step back from that because, in fact, it's the community that have identified that as one of their priorities. It's in the plan. That is their aspiration, to have somewhere where the community can come and have services available to them that allow them to stay within their community and have the services that they deserve. And I would say, I'm not sure if I said it well enough at the beginning, but our government partners have been really awesome through this process, and they are right in there with us, helping us to develop this plan around a community hub. So there is a plan the community have a plan for a hub, we support that, and we'll work with our government partners and of course our other community partners to develop something really special over the next few years. So it's definitely on our radar.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillors? Well, I'm going to open it up then for some discussion because I know... Oh, yes, you... Oh, right. For the... Just a moment, please. Thank you. I'll just take... Eugene, were you wanting to... was this a question or was it just a discussion?
The discussion segment, what I was wanting to do was to make a comment and signal my intent to move the recommendation.
Thank you. I'll take that now, the recommendation. I'll just take you as the mover and then we're going to open it up and I'll get a seconder and then we can open it up for discussion. Councillor Wang, did you? Thank you. So it's moved by, thank you. Thank you. So I've got a mover and a seconder, so I now open it up for general discussion on the plan. What we've heard today. Yes, Eugene. Mr. Berryman Kemp.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, really, what I wanted to, I'm actually not going to comment on the details of the plan because I guess for me, intrinsically, as the elected member that was on the Deliberations Working Party, my comment is that I wanted to comment on the robustness of the process, and I think that the quality of the plan is a direct function of that. And so just for the benefits of the committee here, certainly what I observed was clearly a community-led, inclusive, comprehensive process. Actually, what I would like to do too is, in particular, I'd like to especially thank Rob and Lee. Because of the way they conducted themselves through this, and I really do want to pass that on because my observation was that council support was supporting and enabling, not controlling and directing. And I think that's an important thing. And certainly from what you've seen, it's not a process that can be rushed. Focusing in on the relationships first was a particularly astute approach because it's the strength of those relationships and working through in an enabling, robust process which has created the robustness of the plan. So thank you both of you for the work that you've done in making sure that our community can genuinely be involved in a plan that they own. So I just wanted to pass that on. I've certainly enjoyed in terms of the Working Party coming along to the, and of observing the genuine community input which has come in. My last closing comment is something of a surprise for me. Rob actually makes an excellent open chicken sandwich. So you may just want to continue consider that too. But I fully support the plan and those recommendations.
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you. Any other? Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Tule.
Kia ora te Chair. Kia ora tātou. E oku tā tuakana tēnā koutou. My journey also started in 2010 when I joined the Te Arawa Standing Committee, and one of the big kaupapa back then was the Eastern Arterial. And the opposition, I felt like the Te Arawa Standing Committee were placed right in the middle of a very sensitive kaupapa. But I chose my side, and I went over to the hapu and developed relationships with Selwyn, with Paraone, and with Ralph at Meriaha, as well as via Irihapiti, and really got a sense of that community. So I've got to show my bias. I was raised in Fordlands and Ford Block, and so you don't go into other people's neighbourhoods without being invited. And so being invited into Ngāpuna was an extraordinary time for me, because I'd only been there with my old people. To go there in my own right with my family and to see what the communities were doing on the east side and to see that whole struggle. I remember all of us marching from Hurunga Te Rangi all the way to this council, and the Karawa and Kuia were right at the front. And normally it would take 10, 15 minutes. It took us 3 hours. But when we came into this council, there was such anger and animosity, but it was from the council side. There was hopefulness with the people, but the council was so angry, and NZTA was so ready. And so what I heard today just kind of warms my heart that in the last 8 years, 10 years, and definitely 2 years that relationship has formed between the Eastside, the hapu, the community, and our council. So I just want to mihi to you all and also to our council. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you, Pōtawa. Thank you. Any further? I'll just use Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora koutou katoa. E te mihi au kia koutou. I'm pleased I've actually followed your journey from the beginning in all your presentations and have been really pleased with the tremendous progress and really an example for the rest of our community. And so we're watching with interest from out our way. And so I commend you all for the success that you've brought it this far. And thank you also for the support. I can recall I was going out to a meeting at Ruamata, and one call to you guys, and everyone turned up, and we came there, and they appreciated that, seeing the support that you gave for that time. I just want to say to Palaone, yes, I recall when you've been in the chamber here at the beginning, ki te pukuriri, koe kia mātou. Engari, I nāia nei, to hear you express those wonderful words now of the progress, yes. So the dark past is behind us, and now, and I say this in all humility, and last Friday, the Mayor and we and Mercial were at a wonderful Te Arawa event in the Energy Event Centre, packed there. I think all your nephews and nieces in this rōpū, they expressed a beautiful haka that everyone was clapping for. But the message was, they're hoha with the kaunihera. But it wasn't our fault. And pleasingly, the tutors were in front of us, turned around and said, not your fault, it's waka kotahi. So, no, thank you for the, I'm very supportive of the motions that are up there for us. And finally, I want to say that one of our judges on the committee, I think you gave 100 out of 100 for your nephews for their mate. Kia ora. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Councillor Yates.
Kia ora through you, Madam Chair. Me mihi ka tika kia koutou. Praone koutou ko Selwyn, koutou te mana whenua o tērā takiwa. Me mihi ka tika. Engari ka huri kia koe, Ralph. Yes, I have been wearing lots of various hats, following this journey with great admiration. Mai te timatanga rā hoki. Engari ka huri kia koe, Ralph, ka hoki ngā mahara kia rangi Paeroa. Nāna no hoki koutou I poipoia. Nō reira, I tēnei wahanga o te matariki, ka whakaaro kia rātou, kua whetūrangi here. So just to our people who are also listening, I just wanted to acknowledge Ralph's wife, Rangi Paeroa, who has since passed, and during this time of matariki, we celebrate those who've been on a long journey with us, but are following from above now. So, me mihi ka tika kia koutou. Great to finally have you here at the table, and thank you to our whānau around the table as well, who have supported, including our staff members who have supported this to get to such an extent. I too am watching very keenly from Koutu how this all rolls out, but on behalf of all of our communities, what a model to aspire to be like. And with regards to the haka, yes, thankfully I didn't have to judge the haka. Heoi anō, kia ora koutou.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So can I just mihi to the Eastside whānau, and I've lived very comfortably under the landmark of Manawa for the last 15 years, and so this plan resonates very well with me. I've been at many hui in the east side, in some of the bastions of non-Māori representation, so good to see you here today, Shirley, and places like the East Side Bowling Club with the neighbourhood support groups, but also many hui on most of the marae, and it was a delight last week to attend the Tuia wānanga at Apumawana for the very first time in my life, the closest marae to my home, so special. But I have felt the sharp edge of Paraoni's tongue on many an occasion, and it's been quite a journey in the since I was first got onto council in the East Ward in 2007. I'm aware of some of those, the hurt from the Ngāpuna and Eastside community over a number of issues relating to historical matters relating to our district plan and designations, which fortunately we're moving on from, and so I feel very comfortable and very happy that this plan is coming to us today, and I look forward to a very peaceful life in the East Side going forward. Ngāmi.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Thank you, Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Tēnei te mihi ki a koe mātua Paraone, me koe Sauan, kei te tika tokorero, pāna ki ngā he o ngā kaunihira o ngā wā I mua. I just want to acknowledge that you are right. Many of our fellow councillors have acknowledged, and what I've said has acknowledged the wrongdoings of the councils in the past, and it is so significant for us to numerously acknowledge and accept that. But it's with great pride that this council walks with you together into the solutions and an aspirational future that you've put in front of us. So thank you so much. It's so significant because in the past, council would go to our communities and say, this is what we're going to do to you. This is what we're going to do to you. But now this is a great approach, and that's why I'm so proud of it. That's why I love it so much, because finally we're showing our communities that as we identify the challenges in all of our neighbourhoods, that we will walk together side by side and find those solutions together. And I think it's a very different way of approaching this, and one that I look forward to continuing in the future. So this is just a start. There's still a lot more to go, but I want to acknowledge and thank you for identifying not only the environmental initiatives, but also how we can grow our economy out tēngai for our whānau too. So thank you so much for having such a broad vision for our people there, for our whānau, and for our children of the future out in tēngai. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morena koutou. I would definitely like to tautoko all the comments before me, and I'm incredibly proud to be supporting this document as well. I think this plan in this document is what's come out of partnership and working together. You know, buy local for local, and it is a document that is full of vision and full of hope. And like Councillor Tapsell just mentioned, to grow the economy, to look after the environment, to look after the people, and to connect the community out in Eastside. And I am incredibly proud to be supporting that. I think, you know, this document, and you mentioned earlier, thinking of our people, thinking about our mokopuna. And I think this document itself is the document to be mokopuna decisions, and that's what we're making here. And it's incredibly, feel heartwarmed, really, that this document's come together, that we're really, we acknowledge the hurt in the past, and we're looking forward towards the future, towards a very bright future. And so, kia ora koutou, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor McPherson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through you, first of all, to the people that have worked so hard and so long on this plan, congratulations. It's sophisticated, it's comprehensive, and it's going to touch a lot of hearts as the years unfold. To all the people that are here as well in support of this plan and the process that's been used, thank you for being here. Very important decision being made today. There are some concerns I have about the developmental methodology that was used. It is capable, like all methodologies, of further improvement, but I will take those, they're largely technical concerns, I'll discuss them with my colleague Jocelyn, but they in no way should be taken as meaning that I have concerns or reservations about the general thrust of the set of proposals. So I'm going to vote in support, full support. Kia ora tātou.
Your Worship.
Kia ora tātou and welcome this morning. And it's been lovely to hear the debate. It reminds me, Paroni, of, actually I'll quote Saul, about old men dream dreams, but young men dream visions. And you've had a vision, and you've led that vision today with Te Tatu Pōnamu Collective and the 5 Hapu to actually right the wrongs of the past. And it sounds like councils don't normally do it, but it's almost requiring a formal apology from council from the wrongs of the past to actually say today, this is the document of healing, as you've called it, Te o Ranganui. And congratulations. I have been loosely involved with this through your leadership, actually, for a long time, but to me it is what we dreamed of when we said Vision 2030. We tried to say what our place and our people and our environment would look like by 2030. That was a bit of a vision, just a snapshot in time. And many hapu reminded us that we're going to be here forever and councillors come and go. But this is a document that you've built up together with the community, and that makes it incredibly important and gives great mana actually to the methodology that you did adopt to develop this together. Also, I'd like to mihi to those, it's nice to see the Regional Council here. It is really important when we work together inclusively that we can see how we can impact on our environment, as you mentioned, Selwyn and also others here today. Thank you for being here. Lions, thank you for being here. Big shout out for how you have worked as a group that provide the glue to some of those things that ratepayers or other philanthropy doesn't provide, and you've done so much out here with this Eastside Collective. Another partner that I'd really like to acknowledge is, and she wouldn't like to be named, but it is Internal Affairs. Barbara, you've been there for so many of these strategies. So many of these strategies, our youth Pūtaki Nui strategy, there you were, quietly working in the glue, in the hapu, to actually bring to light and breathe air onto the dreams and aspirations of our people. And we thank you for that. Government departments don't often get thanked, but that's a partnership that we value particularly. It's nice to see Ngāti Whakaui sitting in the back there with land holdings waiting to be developed in partnership with us in Council and Regional Council and Government. So many of you are here. I'm going to overlook you, I'm sure, but I never forget those meetings that we led in the marae. And I think that's the learning that you've opened up to so many of us. As you mentioned, Councillor Donaldson, about being in Upper Moana. Isn't it amazing? So many of our people have never had the privilege of being exposed to your world, that you are now opening the doors of your world to let us come in and learn. And I thank you for that, because that's generosity of spirit and manaakitanga. The schools, yes, Councillor Maxwell will get Lakes High there back when we finally open stage 2 of Tino Road. I've already had approval from Stavros Michael that would be entirely appropriate to have our kura there at that opening, because that was a maimai that needed to be restored and that work had to be done. So it is about connected communities, it is about resilience, and it is about well-being, health and well-being that we said in Vision 2030, that we had those 7 goals that when you put all of those goals together, we're going to be the richer as a community. This is an incredibly exciting initiative. You've shown us the way. You've breathed light onto what can be possible in our long-term plan discussions now about other hubs that can be developed in north, west and south. So thank you, Eastside. That's where the sun rises, and you've shown us the light on how we can achieve for our community when we work together.
Thank you, Your Worship. And before I put the motion, I am going to just say a few words. And thank you. I know that the people who are sitting here today represent their communities of the hundreds of people of Eastside. So, and anything that is worth doing does take time. And you can understand that it was a journey of 2 years, if not more, actually, just to think about developing a vision and to marshalling everything that goes behind making sure that that vision actually comes to a plan so that it can be worked on in the years to come. You've set your own priorities for the community through consultation, and those are your priorities, what you feel is right for your community. And so you're claiming your space in that area. And the other wonderful thing is you have included the voices of children, of the young people. And that is something that in the past has not usually been undertaken. I mean, I'm not saying that they were an add-on, but usually it is the adults always that we hear, and yours is a reflection of the children that you've consulted with who actually want to make sure, and then you want to make sure that it's the best place for them to be brought up and to live, and many of them in their own little Hare and tribal, in their own iwi and hapu in that area as well. And so you're shaping your community going into the future. Can I just say, yes, many of us here are aware about what has happened in the past, and there's been fractious relationships. I'd like to think that we've moved on from there, and that is very much as a result of the people that you see around this table. You know, when we lead as a community, then we've got to understand that there are other priorities in the community, and that those priorities now are important to where people live, and they want to make sure that the voices that were not heard in the past are now heard. And so I do want to take the opportunity to thank our staff, and I'm thanking you, Rob and Lee, because you have actually enhanced Council's relationship with the community from Eastside, and that is a job that has, I know, in the past not always been easy, because people have long memories and they know what has happened. And so I thank you very much for the time and effort that you've put into making sure that there is a robust plan that hopefully we'll all approve this morning, and that it has been undertaken with goodwill on both sides, and that's so important, when goodwill and good faith on both sides. And so we look forward to seeing the plan implemented in the future, and it will bode well for Eastside community. So thank you very much. Councillors, we do have our 3 and 4. Oh, wait a minute. 2, 3 and 4 up there, thank you. And we have a mover and a seconder. It was moved by Eugene Berryman-Kemp. Seconded by Councillor Wang, thank you. So I'll put those, thank you. That the committee recommends to Council to adopt the final Te Oranganui Rāwhiti Mai Eastside Community Wellness Plan. The committee recommends that Council work programs and actions aligned with Te Oranganui Rāwhiti Mai Eastside Community Wellness Plan. The committee notes that progress on the Te Oranganui Rāwhiti Mai Eastside Community Wellness Plan will be reported back via Council's Operations and Monitoring Committee on an annual basis. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion now. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Kia ora. Thank you. Yeah. I think we'll take a break now and invite everybody to join us out the gallery there for morning tea. So we'll take a break of 10 minutes, please, councillors. And committee members, and we're on 6.2 of the agenda. So I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder, please, that the report extending Rotorua Economic Development's role to support Council to deliver on long-term plan, economic development framework and city centre regeneration objectives, that report be received. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kaifong. Thank you, Councillor Yates. Thank you, Councillor Yates. Thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Morena JP, and to Andrew and John.
Morena, councillors. Madam Chair, I've just got quite a short presentation here, just talking about why we're proposing to make this modest extension to the purpose of Rotorua Economic Development to support us very tactically and focused in how it's applied to assisting with some of the quite significant targets we have moving forward, and making sure that obviously in that process we do not erode their ability to deliver their other functions as a regional tourism organisation and as an economic development agency. So if I just step you through that, probably the context most importantly there is I just wanted to make sure we talked about the why and the significant requirements and implications we have around our population growth and the need for additional homes to be developed in our district over the next 10 years. All of you will be aware, we've talked about this ad infinitum across various workshops, but it is critical that we make sure we use every part of our organisation to work effectively with the market space or commercial sector and also into government to deliver our housing requirements moving forward. So it's logical to make sure that we're equipping part of our organisational family, the CCO, to assist us with that. I just wanted to point out again how we've stepped up in the delivery of homes over the last year or so, and again reference back to the drivers we have out of the LTP targets. Advantages of red, and obviously the additional objectives and next steps which are covered in the report, so I'll just paraphrase those. So councillors, this does not appear quite so nicely on screen, but this comes from our projections that we've done with Infometrics. So we've talked about the growth requirements that have been projected for the city, both medium and high growth. Now we've converted that into the housing requirements. So you can see there the population changes across the next 10 years converted into household units. The different colours across there also indicate, based on the income distribution of our community and also the level of beneficiaries within our community, the number of social or community housing that's required in there as well. So a mix of market and the various forms of public and social housing. So that's sort of the breakdown of the housing units we need. So that equates over the 10 years, if we take a medium growth projection of about 6,000 plus homes, including the deficit of about 1,750 homes that we've talked about previously that was undertaken by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development in their place-based assessment. So that gets us to that 6,000 homes required for the city. If you take our high growth scenario, we need something like 5,500 homes, and then of course our requirements under the National Policy Statement of Urban Development to make sure there is that capacity, we're up over 6,000 again. So that is why we've talked to you consistently over the last 6 or 8 months about those projections and about that target of about 6,000 homes required in our district over the next 10 years. Now, just by way of comparison, if you took the 10 years about 2002 to 2012, there was about 1,100 homes built in that 10-year period. So we're talking about a 5 or 6 times increase in the number of homes delivered in our district over the next 10 years. So that's a significant change in both the land availability, social housing development, and the construction sector available to deliver those. And equally, one of those strategies is to make sure there's some household units contributing to the vibrancy of the inner city and giving some people some other options. So a key driver for us is to make sure those homes are delivered different types, different places, but also with a bigger picture view of how we support the development of the city overall. So I've just captured there a graph that we've also shown to you in workshops before. So our district plan was written in a time when there was pretty much zero growth. So there's a line that goes across and it sits at about 3,500 available house lots worth of land. So that's an estimate based on the currently zoned residential land across the district. So when you think 3,500 and we need to get over 6, we're woefully short on zoned land. And that's a national issue as well as a local issue for us. So there needs to be a view of how you create intensification so that we can get more homes into our current urban footprint. And equally then start talking about what other greenfield areas need to be identified and the plan changes put in place. So that was the subject of our spatial plan 3 years ago, and it's still the blueprint we're working off as far as those potential future areas. So all of those things take time. So you can see there that green line at about 2024, 25 is a bit of a step up, because that's when we see on the back of all the work we're doing around the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, we'll start seeing some biting there of the new plan changes required to make sure there's available land for us to develop. It's also important in thinking about stepping up in those available land, both for intensification and for greenfield development, the infrastructure question. And obviously we also need to make sure this story aligns with our applications around the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund, so that's critically important. So also shown there is obviously that growth projection, so that takes us up to the 5 or 5,500, 6,000 homes. So that's the two lines heading off towards the top of the graph. What we're seeing is a gradual increase in the number of developments, both greenfield and redevelopments in the city. So if we took a sort of guesstimate of our current pace of change, that becomes that blue wedge heading up towards the bottom. So you can see there, if we take our current view of projections, unless we bring in more changes and put more effort into supporting social housing development and greenfield and intensification development, we will not get to the 6,000 homes. So this is one of the things that we're putting a lot of attention on at the moment, is how do we get a much larger step up in that line to ensure we get more homes built in the first 3 or 4 years to really start getting on top of our significant deficit of homes in our city. So where are we currently sitting? So I just pulled these back out of the O&M report you saw last week. So I talked about that period between about 2002 and 2012, where it was average of about 110 homes being built per annum. I think last year it had stepped up to 170. And you can see from this year, Jason Ward's projections there are starting to look like we're sitting in the zone of 250, 270. So again, we're still now starting to approach the midpoint of what is starting to be required. So again, we need to start seeing the next step up and the step up after that. So quite significant numbers need to be increased. So there is no single silver bullet to achieve those increases in homes. We must sort of look at every single mechanism and opportunity to increase our housing supply. And also then harness the rest of our organisation to start supporting us on that delivery. So that's really the focus of this paper. So again, just unpackaging that, and really the reason why we've brought this to you after you've adopted the long-term plan was we were waiting to ensure that the decisions that had been consulted on as part of the long-term plan consultation document were agreed and finalised within the LTP process. So for us, the important timing was why wasn't this included in Red's SOI earlier? It's because we wanted to make sure we were clear about the decisions that you made around our housing targets and requirements moving forward. So I've mentioned there 6,000 plus homes over the next 10 years, or household units. The need to see some rapid increases in the next 5. So we really need to step up quite considerably. So it's not simply a case of just deciding to break the 6,002 at the halfway stage. Actually, that's the really big step ups we need to make is in these first 3 to 5 years. We've also talked about the need to put in place 2 new apartment developments within the inner city. So there's an opportunity there for us to partner and proof the value piece of apartments developments within our city. It goes to our strategic framework that we've identified for the city and that need to develop vibrancy and bring more people into the city. That's an essential change we need within the city. So that's been 2 targets. Additionally there, we've also talked about it's great building homes, but we need jobs too. So the criticality there of the 25 hectares of additional business industrial park for business extension and relocation around some of our key priority areas. And also that feeds towards our 9,000 jobs target as well. We need to fundamentally change the basis of our local economy and our employment picture. So really need to focus in on that space. And the last piece then is Council does not have a huge property portfolio, but we need to make sure that we're able to leverage that as effectively as we can to achieve those wider goals. So that's really been the focus of our why. So I've talked briefly about this as a modest extension of the purpose of Rotorua economic development at this stage. And really, for me, we've identified the options. So we could have created a separate CCO, but we would lose another 12 to 18 months. We also don't believe at this stage there would be enough to keep a separate CCO effectively going. So we've decided to be quite targeted and quite specific to start with the opportunity of bringing in more property and more opportunities as we progress. So keep it focused. So really there is an opportunity to leverage off the capability we have within the board, and there is extensive capability and experience in that board and decision-making capability in there, and also within the staff. And also the existing relationships. So working as an economic development agency in our regional tourism organisation, they're a trusted partner to business and work extensively with business and see the opportunities that can be developed across the city. The other values of using a CCO is the opportunity to put in place one of those areas where businesses struggle, which is confidentiality. So that ability to make decisions, move with speed, to be trusted and to work within that confidentiality space effectively. There's also an advantage, certainly to us as a district development perspective, of keeping it, particularly in inner city discussions, one step removed also from our regulatory function, which needs to look more extensively at that as well. So that was the reasons why we believe this extension of RED is the right approach. So within the report, and I think this is on about page 29 or 30, there is this extension of those objectives. So really what we're asking you today is to support in principle the extension of those objectives with the view that we would come back with a more detailed report in the next month, which talks about, well, what resourcing do we actually need to put in place? What are the financial parameters and how does that come through as a funding agreement? What does that mean for our financial delegations and any tax or other implications that come through there? So we're working with our lawyers in that space. To confirm to your satisfactions how we get back regular reporting from RED on the work that's been undertaken, and also a view of the properties we would be asking RED to administer and to use to leverage to try and create some of those developments within the inner city. So in the report we've used the transformational and placemaking words, but really this is a case of trying to get a different use solidified within the CBD, which adds vibrancy and really proofs the opportunities there are for housing within the inner city. So critical changes that we need to put in place. So Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions, or I'll just throw across to my sidekicks here on this discussion. Maybe they can take the questions more than I will.
Thank you very much for that clear overview, JP, and I'm happy to take questions now. Open it up for questions. Mr. Berryman-Kemp.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, thank you for your report and the recommendation. I have 3 questions, so I'll just roll through them. The first one is actually just regarding that statement that there exists within RED the commercial expertise that's required. I just want to tease that out a wee bit more because intensive residential apartment development in provincial cities, I think, is quite a specialised skill set, particularly in aligning the gap between the housing need, the buyers, and making sure that we're actually building the homes that we want. So my first question was I just wanted confirmation in terms of the depth of expertise within that particular space and how RED is planning to address it. So
we'll take one question at a time, thank you.
Through the Chair. So, look, it's a good question. Certainly, it's not something that any CCO would be able to go out and recruit for as a staff member. This is specialist skills that you've got to procure in, and certainly from the partnerships we've got already with the commercial advisors, that expertise does exist, and we've already been talking with those people.
Just adding to that, I think that the board expertise and the capability, certainly within the team, is around evaluating and assessing business cases and understanding that framework, but also in the staff about commissioning work and managing contracts. So when we spoke to some of the other property development CCOs around the country, there was a view that you should not be trying to recruit in all your capability requirements. It's just not there and not available. The key there is to have the right kind of people to set the contracts and get that expertise contracted in when required. So certainly that was our experience from talking to some of the Auckland CCOs.
Look, I'll just add a little bit of context to that too, that in going through this and those strategic targets, you know, they are very ambitious, and no organisation can do it on their own. You've got to see RED as the catalyst to work with the private sector to get that private capital into the marketplace and build confidence. So at the moment, you know, we're against the clock, very much against the clock here. So speed is our friend. And I think what we're trying to do here is utilise the skills that myself, my colleagues have around the board table in that property area, which, you know, I'm dealing with it on a daily basis, and so are my other colleagues there. Work with the private sector and make sure we're the catalyst. We don't want to compete with the private sector. That's exactly what we don't want to do, but we certainly want to create confidence, because when you're an investor, the biggest thing that prevents you from making an investment is the feeling of risk. Whether it's real or perceived, there's risk there, and that'll actually change the dynamic in terms of whether someone will make a decision to say, yes, I'm going to build, or no, this is too risky. And a lot of it is about just making sure there's confidence in the market, and it's our job, the way I see our job is to be that catalyst to make sure that we are there to create confidence and actually de-risk some of these projects as well. So those targets are going to be, they are quite heady, they're going to be tough, but I'm actually confident with the board that we've got and management team, and working with the private sector, that's the key to it, working with the private sector, that we can actually achieve this.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I might roll my next 2 questions into one and see if that would work. My next question is, whilst I get the point about the availability of land lots and everything else too, obviously we've had comprehensive discussions around this table and the council table on the capability of our infrastructure to handle that, because whilst we may be able, if part of this drive is for intense city centralised living, whilst the actual landmass might be less, the same number of people are going to be in there. So my question, actually there are 2 questions. My question is, what mechanisms will be in place to ensure that the infrastructure is in place to be able to cater for this? My third question was also about what mechanisms are in place to ensure that what we're generating, if this moves to the Rotorua Economic Development Unit, are homes not houses, because there's been massive discussion on the importance of homes. Personally, I'm interested in the interaction with blue space, green space, biophilic cities, that sort of thing. Whilst I can see the commercial rationale, what mechanisms are in place to ensure that the living spaces that we create are appropriate for the communities that we want?
Infrastructure is the quick answer. It's probably the most well-serviced of the city, of the wider city. So the CBD inner city space is actually pretty well catered for on water, sewage and wastewater. So the core services, which are challenges across the rest of the city, are pretty well provided and anticipated within the CBD. So that's the least of our issues. I know that a number of developments, as they've gone through, have found some challenges with the power supply, so a lot of work being done on upgrading power supplies, but that's another party we need to talk to. So that's probably the biggest constraint in the inner city.
Thank you. And I presume that no developer is going to build houses or homes if he doesn't have an idea that there's going to be a market for them. So, Your Worship? Oh, no, it's all right. He rolled it into one. Thank you. That's sufficient. Thank you. We're moving on. Thank you. Your Worship?
Yeah, great to see we're getting underway now. The LTP is signed off, because that's where we signed off the infrastructure plan for 30 years to meet our aspirations of growth. But my question to you is, I'm certainly in support of this option A. But the discussion that you hear in the community, where does philanthropy sit? So they're keen to be part of an entity too, to help with co-investment and issues like that. Where do they sit in this option that you've put to us today? And the other question is, I'm really getting tired of hearing about Tauranga and priority one. Are we changing the way that we work here by extending the objectives here through RED?
Starting at the back end of those questions, yes, we are changing how we operate, and I think it is a bit more of a holistic opportunity here, and I think, as John has highlighted, it does give us the opportunity to actually see all three legs of the development opportunities within the district, and it is about the communications, the opportunities, the discussions, and that confidence that exists. Philanthropy is, we've been approached and there is ongoing discussions. It's whether it sits within this extension into the inner city is a possibility, but that will be for discussion, or if it sits somewhere else in the district, that would be back through the rest of the council. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just to add to that, certainly I think on a project-by-project basis, we'd expect to be dealing with any of those partners. Yeah.
Councillor Kai Fong, then Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I signal that I'd be happy to move the recommendation? I just have one question. It's just the disadvantages that are under option A. I'm happy to support the recommendation, but RED has a key function as a regional tourism organisation, and whilst we're currently in a hiatus with COVID with our international tourists, but making sure that we still have the capability and the focus on that area whilst we're still focusing on the new housing initiative.
Yep, look, that, through the Chair, that certainly does continue to be a strong focus for us. So we're currently, I know we've reported back a couple of times, we're currently working on a destination management plan with the broader sector and community, which will come back to Council in August, I believe. The team still is very focused in terms of how we support those tourism operators from a domestic sense, and that's obviously there's a lot of activity continues in that area. We're continuing to perform quite strongly as a destination from a domestic sense. So there's no there's no erosion of the work that we do in that space under that proposal.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson.
Chair, thank you, Chair. Through you, morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for this report. I noted in your presentation, John Paul, you said you're going to come back with a detailed plan. That confirms the initial impression I got that this proposal is preliminary. It's therefore incomplete. It's, in my view, slightly premature. I'll come to my question in a moment. The first question. the proposed property development staff and infrastructure costs need to be attributed, I believe, to each of the three major projects that you're proposing. The housing, the inner city revitalisation and the industrial park. Is it not the case that we would need those three draft budgets to compare them to what central government is proposing for housing prior to authorising a new statement of intent? Because could it be possible a different profile of projects might be warranted once we know more definitely what the central government is proposing?
No. This is it.
I'm struggling to understand how we align a conversation or try and match the goals we set ourselves as a territorial authority and the aspirations we have for revitalisation with any program being established or discussed by central government. I don't see the correlation between that at all. Your first question, though, did relate to we sought your support in principle here, and if you've got that support, we'll come back with that detail about what we need to fund additionally to support the delivery of these objectives, and also assign the properties we're identifying as need to be administered by RED. So this is a two-step approach, and we did want to get your in support principle to those objectives, and then we'll come back with that detail for ratification.
Yes. I'll get to my second question in a moment, that in effect we're being expected to agree to the extension of RED's role prior to knowing crucial information, in my view. But if we can go on to my second question.
Yes.
Thank you. Just to tolerate this point of order, we have a housing plan. We've set our housing plan, built on the place-based assessment. Government's not going to put expectations over us. We are defining our own future, and government is a partner, as we saw in the task force. So
that's correct. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me move, therefore, from my second question. It concerns the need for consultations with stakeholder groups. In your report, you indicate that there's no need. You dismiss any need for consultations with groups other than Te Aroa, but whose entities could well be, could have conflicts of interest as potential partners. Now, this strikes me as a bit odd and potentially undemocratic, and it could lead to the perception that non-Te Aroa ratepayers are being regarded as second-class citizens by not being consulted.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Member to withdraw and apologise.
So, no, I won't be withdrawing because that's a sincerely held belief and a proposal.
Thank you. Just an order, please. There's no second-class citizens in our community.
I said it could lead to the perception.
No.
Please listen carefully.
Thank you.
No.
So my question is this. Prior to approval by Council of this extension of the role of RED, could not we bring forward public consultations and hearings, particularly in the light of the LTP consultations which show that there is not broad support for the RED becoming a property development company?
Order, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you, Naz. I won't take your point of order, but there's no need to answer that question. So, thank you. I'm going to move on to our next councillor who wanted to put a question. Councillor Maxwell.
I have a third question.
No, thank you. That's sufficient. I've heard enough. Thank you.
Oh, hold on.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor McPherson. Thank you.
Could I move
the
a
line
motion
of
of no
questioning was
confidence in the chair,
offensive,
please?
and I'm not having any further. Thank you. We'll move on to Councillor Maxwell.
The proposed point of... I've asked for a motion of no confidence in the chair, and it's been seconded.
No.
You now have to vacate the chair.
Point of order.
No, I do not have to vacate the chair.
You do too.
I do not have to. I am the chair.
Orders.
I can accept anything. So I'm not. So thank you. We will move on. And Councillor Maxwell, can you put your... Thank you. I don't tolerate that sort of behaviour, Councillor McPherson.
It's consistent with standing orders.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before my question, I'll just say thank you for the presentation, and I share with you this is the right approach. I support the principle, and you're right, John, RED is the catalyst. Before my question, I've attended a lot of functions this year especially, and we're getting a lot of interest from developers and people, especially Chinese developers from Auckland and down here. So what I do want to ask, my question is, do we have some good capable staff to be able, with the language skills to take this on board for us?
It's probably fortunate that we deal with the tourism sector quite often, so certainly we've got the ability to call on people with those language skills as required.
I support the motion that Councillor Kaifong has made. Well, I'll second that motion.
We have a seconder, thank you.
Oh, I didn't.
Mr Thomas, then Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I have got some comments I'd like to make when we move on to comments. But look, I just want a very quick question, and it's really just around when we're talking about the inner city or the CBD, and I'd just like confirmation. We're not really just talking about Te Tanakai Street. Rotorua has the defined CBD is huge, larger than Hamilton's, most probably approaching the size of Wellington's, and enabling a timely redevelopment of what we now call the CBD. There are huge opportunities and advantages there. So am I right in thinking we're talking about the whole CBD area?
That's correct. Look, I think in the report we cited the target would be the CM1, CM2 zones, which take up that larger footprint of our CBD. I did make reference quickly in the presentation there to our strategic framework that we have for the CBD. And you all know that the objectives that have existed across 20 years worth of plans for the CBD have talked about the need to get that consolidation in the core and alternative uses, particularly housing on the fringes. So yes, absolutely yes.
Thank you, JP. Councillor Yates, then Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Nei rā te mihi kia koutou. Whilst this is a preliminary discussion, I'd like to support also option A because it's based around immediacy. But my question is, would there be consideration to establish a CCO in future as a long-term mechanism?
Through Madam Chair, there is always that option, and I think we're taking the first steps into that space with quite a targeted focus, and I think this gives us the opportunity, I think, for John, his board, to get an understanding about how that impacts on the RTO, EDA functions, and how effectively we can deliver that. The opportunity exists in the future to either expand it with RED or consider an alternative CCO development if required. Again, councillors, we've been talking about the need to step up our housing, and we consulted around our Homes and Thriving Community strategy. The consultation document we put out traversed the role change that would be required of council to be more active in supporting both market and social housing development. So we've extensively asked our community about those kind of mechanisms. Certainly led by our Chief Financial Officer, we've been really clear about how you go about changing the purpose or establishing a CCO. So we're absolutely entitled to adjust their objectives or expand those objectives. And finally, even the discussion around funding is funding that's coming from our current budgets. So if there's a transfer of funding to enable RED to undertake their own separate work, that will be part of that funding agreement, that will not be additional for our community. And similarly, with the administration of properties are our properties. So that's the key focus there. So even that ability to acquire additional properties will be based on the funding that we pass across.
Thank you. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. I'm in definite support of this with the understanding that a terms of reference will come back. So I understand the process and thank you for coming to us early on. with the change in direction for us to approve, so that we can then give you the task of coming back with the more detailed information, which I'm sure many questions from ourselves and also from our community will be better answered through that process. But the questions that I do have, the first question is just on what is the scope. So I'm happy to support housing and further development, in particular with the inner city, but what else fits into that transformative placemaking projects? And then I have a second question.
Through the chair. So at this stage, the scope is really tight. So it is literally talking to inner city apartment developments, or alternatively, where council has got another land holding where there may well be a better use for it. But beyond that, we are certainly not looking to operate at this stage.
That's very good. That gives me even more confidence. Thank you. And just my second question was, what consideration has gone into pensioner housing? And I ask this question because it is nothing new of the council to be providing housing for the community. We already provide 152 pensioner units, and that number, 152, has remained the same for the last decade. So we are well behind in terms of our investment, but that's in our suburbs of Ngongotaha, Fenton Park, Glenholm and Westbrook. So I just wonder, knowing that we have had also the growth of an ageing population, and at times our elderly are the most vulnerable, has there been any consideration of the, I suppose, the maintenance and renewals, but also the further increase of pensioner housing for our community?
Absolutely, there has. You'll recall a few years ago we did look at the opportunity of selling or transferring our pensioner units to a not-for-profit who would then be able to, as a community housing provider, get access to subsidies for rental, for which we couldn't. And that's certainly the approach taken in by other councils around the country. The numbers for us didn't quite stack up, so we worked closely to see if we could complete that sale, and it was unsuccessful. Since then, the philanthropics have been back talking to us and some of those community housing providers. Now, they've been talking effectively together about opportunities, so at this stage, there is another opportunity for us to investigate how we can expand the current stock in conjunction with community housing providers and the philanthropics across the city and across the Bay of Plenty. So there is some significant opportunities, and again, it becomes one of the many opportunities we must investigate if we're to have an impact on the housing requirements that we have. So it is underway.
Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. That's a very relevant question around the pensioner housing. By the year 2030, 60% of those who are retiring will be renters. Those are the 65 years of age. 60% of those retiring from the year 2030 onwards will be renters. So that's a really big consideration in terms of housing for a growing sector of our population in the city. So very relevant. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Tanya, for your question. You beat me to it. So, thank you for the answer, and thank you for the presentation and the aspirations you have. It's almost, I sit here and look at it and think this is quite Twyford-ish in goals. And are you aware that we have now, and we've got for the foreseeable future, the ability to build is severely restricted in the supply chain of materials, both timber and steel. And how do you think we can get around this with this proposed large number of new dwellings?
It's a really tough one to answer because it's not just a local problem or a national problem, it's actually a global problem. And I've got many customers that are suppliers of materials who are in a good space, you could say, because price and demand is excellent. When it comes to construction, you've got a number of construction projects going on in my own portfolio that we've seen a significant rise in construction costs, anywhere up to 20%. One would hope, though, that over the next period of time, things will settle as we end up with, standard economics. you sort of see, supply and demand equilibriums will go in and out, and depending on the timing of it. And I know a number of clients of my own and around the country that are gearing up and employing more. So one of those statistics on the board that JP had was around the number of people that are being employed. And there's a number of discussions that are commercially confident at this stage, where there are organisations, building organisations and manufacturing, particularly around the wood manufacturing organisations, that are looking to move here because they see there's opportunity in this economy, and being closer to this economy is actually very appealing. So there's a number of conversations that are going on that will help solve that problem, but not immediately. So I think, we have to be real in that when we're talking about construction, that we're working with partners who have access to supply of those materials. And that's just going to be part of the challenge that we all live in. Is we don't have any silver bullets or anything unique other than we're a cool place to be, and this is where people want to work and play. And I think, there was a couple of questions that I just want to touch on. Afford me just a minute, sorry, and I'll just go on about that. There was a couple of questions just around whether Rotorua Economic Development is the right organisation to be actually delivering this. And we talked about yes, it is because of speed, and we've got capable board and management team. But I think if you think a little more strategically about how we answer that, is that when we're talking about Rotorua, we're talking about Rotorua as a destination. A destination that's going to be desirable in terms of a place to come and visit, but also a place to come and live. Now, as an organisation, if we can actually match those two objectives up closely, then we start thinking about Rotorua, we need to make sure that we have the product. When I'm talking about the product is not just tourism operators doing a great job and retail facilities doing a great job. It's also about having great housing, great homing, a great looking city. The whole package has to be consistent, so when we've got someone who's coming here as a destination, wanting to either live or wanting to visit, our product is consistent right through the whole city. And that's our big challenge. It's not a small challenge at all. So I go back to where I started, which is, are we the right organisation to actually deliver both, the tourism sector destination and obviously the stayer destination? I think we are. I think we are because we can actually use the same capability set, the same sort of thinking to make sure that as a city, as a community, that we actually have a fantastic product that we can all be proud of. That's our mission, and it's not an easy one to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and you really put it very clearly too. And sometimes we just need to, from time to time, look over and out and take that strategic view as well. And don't forget, we've got the biggest sawmill, I think, is it in the Southern Hemisphere, on our doorstep. So thank goodness for that. Thank you. Now, we have had a mover and a seconder, so I am going to open it up for discussion now. I would ask councillors that you please make put your comments and opinions respectfully. There's no need to be derogatory when you put your views and your comments, because sometimes those are offensive, and I'm not going to be bullied into actually accepting some of those comments. So just remind us all of that. Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and if it hasn't been seconded, I am happy to second. Look, I just wanted to make the comment that this is our opportunity to move Rotorua forward and to actually stamp on Rotorua what we want to see our city to look like, rather than leaving it to developers to develop on their own. And if you drive south from Auckland, you look at Pocono and you see what happens when council or when the community is not involved in the decisions on how they're going to look in the future. Looking even at that CBD area, we've just got some really outstanding locations around there, just prime areas to be developed as housing and as homes. So it is a really exciting time for us. We can shape Rotorua to look like Rotorua, not like Tauranga, not like Auckland, not like anywhere else. This is our opportunity to do that, and our opportunity to signal to those developers in other areas what we're looking for in Rotorua and to give them confidence as well. If we're investing, then they're going to be confident to invest. I totally agree that using RED to get this up and running now is the way to go. We've actually been talking about, this isn't brand new, this is something we've been talking about for years now, and it is time to start the work. So fully support this.
Thank you. Councillor Kai Fong, I'm sorry, I should have, as the mover, I should have passed to you first to open up the discussion, so I beg your pardon.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. And as I signalled, I'm happy to move this recommendation. I'd just like to remind councillors, we had a workshop pre-LTP, and we did talk about the way in which we would try and deliver on the building of new homes. And I remember the discussion that we had, because I know that I was probably a bit hesitant about looking at the models that we could use to proceed with this. And I know that one of the options was to set up a completely new CCO, and I can see that that really isn't an option. What we have got is the capability within RED. And John, I like the fact that, you know, when you talk about homes and jobs, if we are going to bring all these 9,000 workers here, we have to have somewhere for them to live. So the two things of jobs and economic growth and homes actually go hand in hand. So it's good to see that that sits within RED's core business. My original concern when we talked about a CCO looking at housing development was whether or not we would be competing in the private market. However, I don't see that here. What we're doing is competing in a separate segment of the market. We're looking at filling the gaps where private developers don't necessarily want to go, and we're also being very selective about the areas in which we're wanting to develop, namely the CBD and the unused council land. I also think the positives for RED being involved in this is that it gives independence of council for a commercial transaction. It gives the ability to employ a different set of resources and skills that we may not have within council, and it gives the agility for RED to actually buy in if they need to that resource, but we're not always having to have it if we don't need it. The other thing is that I'm happy that you'll still focus on our key areas of tourism, as well as the other aspects of wood processing and forestry, which are also part of RED's portfolio to look after. The fact is that this option also doesn't include any additional cost at this stage, so we're just, to use JP's COVID-19 term, pivoting our resources to make this happen. So I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kai Fong. Your Worship?
Yes, well, goodness me, there's a bit of a lead being shown there by a councillor, and it's great to see that level of support around the table for this aspirational, but I have to say absolutely eye-watering targets that we have set in our long-term plan, and we need a nimble and fast response to meet those targets. So the number of houses and then the number of sections that we're going to try to open up is mouth-watering and eye-watering, and I know, JP, that's exactly why you're working differently now in your new role to actually make sure we have speed, haste, nimbleness and the right entity established in which to deliver the targets that we've set. I was challenged last night, actually, at Rotorua X about Wood First. So here we go. We've got a Wood First policy. Government's now adopted Wood First, and I was challenged, why can't you, council, tell developers they've got to build in wood? And I had to say that that's difficult for us because we're not the builders, but it is looking at that expectation as one of the criteria that we'd like to see so much more wood in our development here, which helps the circular economy about jobs, investment, people coming in, the value of Red Stag and our other developers and so on. So those are things that I think we'll get an expanded terms of reference back that we would like to see reflected somehow. But I think this is very exciting. We can't muck around. We can't muck around talking about what options are best for delivery. They can start as soon as this resolution's underway. And that's the urgency that we set all of those councillors that supported our long-term plan just a week ago. I am thrilled to see that now papers are coming to us, tumbling at a rapid rate, to show that we are a much more outward working council, working with other key agencies and government to deliver our aspirations. And John, could I just acknowledge also your leadership there in Red? You've put up with a lot over the years, actually, as our CCO chair, but you are implacable. You know about the vision, and I know that we have some good, robust discussions too about how Red can be properly positioned in order to deliver the expectations of this council. So I'm delighted to support this today. I think it's showing already, 2 papers that have come to us today, that this council hasn't been mucking around. They've been working out how the rubber hits the road with our long-term plan aspirations. This is good work. Thank you for bringing it today so soon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr Berriman-Kemp, then Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, what I wanted to do in my comment, I just wanted to build on John's comment about the advantage of combining in the strategic priorities for RED in terms of a total package. Just bouncing back to one of my questions regarding creating homes and from the sustainability perspective, the comment that I just wanted to make is actually if one of the issues is power supply in the centre, then actually through astute design and council regulation, we may have the ability to differentiate our inner property development for them to be self-sustainable in terms of their own power grids, biophilic cities, things like this. So the comment that I wanted to make is that I can certainly see there's advantages in terms of generating the total package that could help differentiate us even more. And I guess it's one of the things that I did want to outline. A couple of weeks ago, I attended MFE's Nature and Wellness Symposium in Wellington. Wellington is committed to being a biophilic city, but actually the challenge from architects was that there were no council requirements that they had to put into their designs to enable that to happen. And they said that it would be much easier if council were quite stringent on those things because it would enable them to design in the sustainability that is meant for. So I just wanted to raise that because there could be a really strong opportunity to differentiate ourselves even further to attract the sort of people we want to come and invest here.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking in support not only of confidence in the Chair, but also the motion on the table. Look, as Her Worship has said, the long-term plan that we approved on the 28th of June set the platform for this piece of work going forward. And I just look back at topics 5 and 6 that were adopted as part of the discussion on that document, and the last paragraph in each which talks about implementation on housing and economic development. And so this is the first step. I agree that it's all about pace. Your presentation clearly articulated we're behind the 8 ball already. The same people who shout about homeless situation in our community are the ones who would not have us set up or have a CCO operating in this space. And also in terms of the RTO role and housing development going hand in hand, well, you know, tourism, the tourism sector has already expressed concern about the loss of tourist beds to homelessness and housing the homeless. So you're the right entity to be holistically dealing with both of those major problems and challenges that we face, in my opinion. It's about pace, it's about leadership. We've sat around here for years arguing about the problems that beset the CBD, and some would say free parking and a lot more car parks will fix the problem. Well, no, it's not. It's populating the CBD is what will fix the problem. So I'm happy with that challenge, and I hope some of those apartments will have a wood first element, because I'll be putting my hand up for one for a lock up and leave, I can tell you. And look, what really impresses me most is seeing Andrew here in a suit, which shows that they really mean business. So I'm happy to support, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Mr Biasini Tule.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. It was your comment, Your Worship, when you said eye-watering. So when I just saw 6,000 homes, I thought, what's eye-watering about that? And if you take 6,000, average house price 650,000, $3 billion, $3.9 billion. So is it realistic to get that much money invested into Rotorua in a short amount of time, 3.9 billion? But for me, so you're saying the 6,000 houses will look after the needs today, but you're also saying 9,000 new people, jobs will come, which will compound your problem. So 6,000 will look after those that are needing houses now, but these extra 9,000 will create a new problem. Am I right?
What we've got in the projections are a mix of is new people coming to the city. So that's the city growth projections that we have there. To ensure that people can come to our city and our place and our district, not just to retire, that they also need to have the jobs there too. So again, the two are linked. So we will not get the growth unless we have the homes, unless we have the jobs. So that's that place of we don't get the sweet spot other than a much smaller set of growth if it's simply a place to come to retire, if you can find a home. So really, to be a thriving community, we need to know that there is that growth in jobs, but equally it's not about, the focus shouldn't be about seeing jobs as the draw here is not from people outside. One of the goals we've been focusing on really importantly in some of the discussions we've had, and probably central to my wider role within council, is about community wealth development as well. So we need to have a level of sustainable economic development, but it's also about community wealth development. We have a significant underutilisation of the people we have here. That's my nice way of describing it. So there is an important pathway for us to ensure there is jobs for people, training for people who live here as well. So that's where we'll be successful if we can engage more of our local community in the employment space. But of course there will be other people who come into the district for that as well. So this is not just a one-way traffic. We've got to build our local economy, and that's the focus I think we all share in our views. So all linked, but critically it's also about community wealth development within our community as well. That's where we address our main problems.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson, and then Councillor Maxwell. Oh, sorry, Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I'd like to pick up and endorse the technically expert evaluation of the role of a CCO that Councillor Kai Fong made. Much of that argument I agree with. There are a couple of concerns that the downscaling of public accountability is inevitable and possibly unfortunate, given the potential for risk assessment to be handled in-house and not exposed to public gaze or our gaze as a council. So I'd like some more thinking done in that area. I do look forward to the coming back with a much more detailed plan by the proponents of this change to the role of the CCO. I'm particularly concerned, I'll be looking very carefully to the extent to which it could put at risk ratepayers' assets. And finally, this proposed new property development component of RED could potentially add many new salaries and the need for an even greater rates take. And this is a time when people and businesses are struggling to survive. So they will be the issues that I'll be focusing on when the detailed plans come back. And so in the interim, I am quite ambivalent and therefore will abstain from supporting this proposal at this time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yates, then Mrs. Trumper.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Me mihi ka tika ki a koe, Mr. Berryman Camp. Mō tēnei āhuatanga o te biophilic environment and the biophilic architecture. I love the idea. So with that, I want to pass comment on the possibility of even having within the constructs of the inner city living, community or communal gardens. Within that, I see a lot of community wealth generated as well. So I'd like to acknowledge you in this investment and all the very best. Kia ora.
Thank you. Mrs. Trumper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think we all need to really sit back and see where we started on making our city transformational. And this council has had an opportunity to be able to identify the growth that is in front of us right now, but actually also look at our future. And I often use, which my kids go, oh God, Mum, do you have to? I use the Dove-Meyer-Robinson argument over the Auckland Harbour Bridge when he wanted to continue with the tolls because he said Auckland would grow to such an extent you would need another crossing. And this is our Dove-Meyer-Robinson moment. We are actually looking forward in such a fashion. We need to be aspirational to be able to deliver it. I did have one question which I wasn't going to ask John, but the board currently has the skill and capability. Will it continue, or is that something that you would be looking at when you're setting the skills set matrix for appointments? So that was just a small point. And the other thing is, what I like about the proposed future state of this is that it's a more streamlined process. It meets agility and to be able to make decisions, and it removes that political bias or interference, because we can't. And the best part about that is that you're coming back to reporting to O&M in your normal quarterly fashion, which is how you actually report to the stakeholders and elected members.
Well, I will allow that question because we are in discussion, but if you'd like to care to, I think that's quite a relevant question. So if you would like to answer your most... Thank you, John.
Certainly will. Look, the evolution of any organisation needs to have an evolution of capability and skill. And it's my role as chair to make sure that the strategy is very clear and our direction is very clear, but also the capabilities from chair right through the whole organisation are fit for purpose. So as the organisation evolves, that's what I'm continually doing, is looking and working with you all to make sure that we've got the best people that are going to deliver the strategy of the organisation. So that's a long way of saying, yes, we will get the right people on board. Hey, just one other comment that came up earlier is, in terms of, and this is something that I personally take on very seriously, is when you start talking about ratepayers' assets at risk, that, in my view, is there's a couple of things. Is we do have to take a degree of risk if we're going to actually do something that's going to be really meaningful and make progress. So that's a given. But how you deal with that risk is really important. How you manage it to make sure that you're not being flippant or you're not taking unnecessary risks that don't get you the right return is really important. And getting that balance and that sort of corporate finance thinking through all of this is really, really important. So I take that on as a very important aspect of what our role is, that we are there to make sure that we're doing a couple of things, is not just protecting those assets, but all growing those assets. So I would actually see the organisation growing a balance sheet over a period of time and making sure that we've got a growth in our equity and a growth in our balance sheet to be able to be more capable of doing the next project and the next project and multiple projects. So we're not going to be giving stuff away, putting it quite bluntly. It is about growing the balance sheet so we're actually in a position where we see over the hill we've got organisations doing the same sort of thing. I'd like to see we could even be more capable of that. And that's going to take a little bit of time, but we've got the right team to deliver on that.
Thank you for that, John, because when you were appointed as chair, and indeed the other board members, I can assure you, you weren't just plucked out of the air. We looked very carefully at what the skills and skill set might be that we believe would be required. So thank you for that. Now, Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, JP. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, John. And also, I acknowledge all the work that your team behind you have done as well, and what you guys have contributed to this as well. I think that we are faced with this opportunity to take urgent action in this area, and anyone who doesn't think so, I think, is a bit blinded with the situation that we're facing in our community now, and actually across our country. I can really see some of these aspects tie into what we've just passed earlier on with the Eastside Community Wellness Plan, and I can see those aspects working alongside together really, really well. And tautoko Mr. Berriman-Camp's comments about biophilic design and sustainable homes, and ensuring that we do work in that area, because how cool would it be if Rotorua led in that area, building sustainable homes and those community gardens and rainwater tanks and solar, solar powered homes and things like that. I think that that area as well, really, we have a bright future in that area as well, and so absolutely support this recommendation, and can't wait to see the progress happening in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell, did I get confused a wee bit? You did have a comment. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and that's okay, because it's been an excellent debate. It's been and I've been listening to all our colleagues, and all have been mainly very positive. Now, I'm supporting the recommendation, and again, I believe it's the right approach, and RED is the catalyst. And I should have asked this question earlier, and this one was on the geothermal. Is some of our rules just, do you think they need a bit of relaxation or something, but still be safe? But I should have asked that earlier. Aroha mai.
Thank you. Thank you. So just before I put that, because we have had a mover and a seconder. Oh, yes, sorry, a right reply. Thank you. Oh, well, I'll put my comments quickly then. Thank you. Thank you. Look, thank you. Look, transformational change can be quite frightening for some people, and it's not for the faint-hearted. But we cannot afford to have incremental change. We've got to have take a quantum leap here as well. So I'm pleased that there'll be no change required to your constitution to enable you to undertake this extended role. And I look forward, as I'm sure we all do, to the updated statement of intent coming back to us in the future. So thank you, councillors, for the good discussion that we've had on this paper today. Councillor Kai Fong, you'd like to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick right of reply. I just wanted to make some comment in response to Councillor McPherson's hesitancy, I suppose, about supporting this recommendation. And what we're doing here is simply expanding the statement of intent and giving a key performance measure, which is around attracting investment and delivering these key transformational placemaking projects. And so there is going to be that opportunity once JP comes back to us, where we will have the opportunity, and nothing will be done without council, having that oversight in terms of the financial aspects. I think in terms of risk, the risk to us is that we do nothing, that we have unused land that is not used, and we just continue having homelessness. And so that is the real risk. So I think that's a bigger risk than a risk that something might go wrong with an apartment block. But I think that if you look at the figures and the shortfall that we've got, the risk is going to be pretty minimal in that respect. In terms of the comments made by other councillors around communal gardens, sustainability and design, I think that, and I'll probably have to bow to JP because I did say, what is a transformational placemaking project rather than just building an apartment block? And I think that what we're saying here is that we don't just want an apartment block, we want all the other things that go around it. So thank you other councillors for bringing those suggestions and making sure that we put these into this project as well. So, yeah, thank you all. I'm just happy to support the recommendation.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, councillors, committee members, for that good discussion this morning. It has been moved by Councillor Kaifon, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. I'm now going to read the resolution. 2, that the committee recommends to council approving the extended role for RED by approving the amendments to RED's statement of intent outlined in section 5.6, and 3, that the committee notes that a subsequent report will detail terms of reference which prescribes the operational and financial parameters of RED's extended role for approval. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Is it just the one? Abstained. Thank you. Noted. So noted. Thank you. Now we do have an update it's going to be in confidential. So could I please have a mover and a seconder that we go into confidential? It will be for a verbal update from JP Gaston on our district development and the reasons for going into confidential. It is commercially sensitive and to protect privacy. Thank you. Mr. Thomas, thank you, and Mrs. Trumpet, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Thank you. Thank you. We'll just take a little break while the chambers are cleared. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you.